genre, guiding you through its unique history against a backdrop of genre-defining tracks. Genre Rules, every Friday at 8:15 on 95 BFM Breakfast.
The public, let me tell you, like public executions. I went to Cambridge University, Charles. I'm a serious fucking journalist living in one of the most important fucking times of human history.
The Wire.
You're on 95 BFM, this is The Wire. It's just gone 22 minutes past 12. Right now on the line I've got Selwyn Manning from livenews.co.nz. We're going to be talking political polling. It hasn't been a good week for National or John Key. A humiliating backtrack of the teacher cuts, another ACC resignation, an investigation into the Sky City deal, and a massive 4% drop in the latest polls. Selwyn, is it that bad for Mr. Key?
I think, Simon, what it does do is it indicates a trend that seems to be setting in. It also is it's indicative, if you like, of why National is very, very reluctant to actually advance policies that are going to cause it a huge backlash. I think it was, a case in point there was its back track on the education policy that was announced in the budget, and within a week, obviously its budget was already out by $100 million because the party was beginning to actually back off pushing ahead with its prearranged plan. So the polling, in a sense, is relevant in what it is showing that the mood amongst the public and where that public mood is kind of directing.
Yeah,
and, I think in that respect it's an important poll.
Now, with focus groups, often, focus groups generally aren't a good idea. I mean, you get generally bad TV series out of them or cars with funny names. But it seems like the National Party needs to do a bit of focus grouping, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, what it seems to be showing is that its policies that it put before the public last year, while broad enough to accommodate some of the more recent kind of decisions it's been making, were still loose enough and ambiguous enough for the public not to actually develop a real concern over those. Also, the National Party last year was still, well, like we know, everybody knew, it was going to win. And we knew that because we, for a long time, were able to identify where that public mood was. And in some ways, I'm trying to get around to answering your question there, but in some ways, if we compare it to where the Labour government was in the 2000s, at the beginning and right up until about 2005, we could see public support right on side with the Labour Party, and then slowly by degrees we saw, I think one of the watershed moments was when the Labour government decided, yep, we'll allow genetic engineering and GMO to be established in New Zealand, and there were huge protests all over the country and a lot of people scratching their heads over that. To a degree, you saw that public opinion vessel like a ship that was pulled up to Labour's dock, starting to inch away and starting to head out to sea. By 2008, we certainly could feel that vessel of public support for Labour had well and truly gone out to sea, and it had attached itself to the National Party. Now, with the National Party, mid-term polling or early term polling like we're in at the moment is really important because they can test that public mood and get an idea of whether or not they are still on track to getting the support of the public should an election be held, in the future. Even though it's 2.5 years away, they can see that the decisions that they're making, if they're not going to satisfy the public mood, then the polls are close enough that the National Party is backing off those policies. So, does that explain it? I'm trying to kind of...
Yeah, I think so. I mean, midterm polling's an interesting thing in the sense that it doesn't seem to go anywhere. Like you have, for instance, minor parties, well, they're not so minor anymore, but like the Green parties, for instance, surge, and this happens also before elections as well. And then there's this voter back off. It just seems a very sort of fickle exercise.
But in that case, like with
is it more a case of public opinion's a bit like the tide. You don't really have much control over it in terms of it's going to go in, it's going to go out, and there's just a cycle to it.
Yeah, there is a cycle, and that's where the political parties are most susceptible to, or most vulnerable within themselves, if you like, to where the polls are shifting. One poll doesn't determine really the outcomes of where a party in government is going to end its thinking. But what it does do is it gives incremental steps along a timeline that when it looks at the trends, it can actually see whether or not it can actually maintain the public support needed to actually get into government once an election is held or not. Now, with this type of thing, there are warning signs there. Now, we know that much of national support was bolstered by the public's like of John Key. John Key traditionally polled well ahead of the party itself. You know, you'd see well over 50% support for the Prime Minister, put John Key as preferred Prime Minister.
Now he's down about 3.7, isn't he?
Yeah. Now that's turned. John Key is not leading the charge there now. The actual National Party is starting to poll, amongst various polls, at around about 45% support for the party. John Key down around 40%. Now that's a 20% drop in support for him over a matter of 6 months.
Do you think that translates into internal support as well?
Well, it gets people jittery. You know, if your whole livelihood and your whole prestige and your ambition in your own political career is all tagged to how a party leader is perceived. Well, when things start going awry, it puts pressures on on that, and you saw that Labour suffering that under Phil Goff. Phil Goff, very capable minister, probably one of the best ministers that they had, arguably, but the public was not turning on to him as the leader of the party, and so you saw jitters starting to show amongst all the factions and the MPs themselves, and that's what can happen. John Key is still a country mile out ahead of anyone else as the preferred Prime Minister, but when you looked at that last poll, the 3 News Read poll, if you stacked 1,000 people up in a hall and you said, okay, those who support John Key as the Prime Minister, you remain in the hall. All the rest that prefer someone else leave. Well, you would have 600 people leave and only 400 left in the hall. So that's a lot of people saying we don't actually like this guy as our preferred Prime Minister. But what I'm getting down to here, I suppose, Simon, is that what we can make here is looking at those trends along a timeline. National has peaked if we take into consideration the polls in the last 3 months. That can change, but what we have seen is the first part of the National's new term since the elections, where it's been a week of hell after a week of hell after a week of hell, and it cannot appear that it's, I'm going to put it this way, it appears not able to break that cycle. Yes. And this is what is worrying to the National Party. You got another thing with superannuation. I think last week BFM did a really good examination on superannuation. Now, with that thing, that is key to the National Party's support, that issue. Now, John Key knows that he, in the election campaign, that he gave an indication that it would remain at 65 years of age to get
Selwyn, is this why he's so dogged about not extending the eligibility, confining it? We're only talking a matter of months, but...
Yeah, exactly, but... You know, that's a core part of National's centrist kind of voting bloc, is from the older people who think, no, they're going to look after us, we'll do that. And National's loath to let too much of that support go back to New Zealand First in that area that looks after the elderly. So John Key's trying to hold on to that. Meanwhile, all those others in the economic sector, you know, the pragmatics, all of those type of people who think this cannot be sustained, superannuation cannot be sustained over a medium term, let alone a long term. John Key has got to go back on his word here and allow it to be raised to 67, or we're in dire straits. Now, they're core support groups and core support voters for naturally a National Party that are kind of saying those kind of things, and that gets the rest of his cabinet and certainly his caucus a bit spooked. So I'm not saying that these things are going to cause John Key to be tossed out, but they're ones for the first time in the last, well, since 2006 when he took over the leadership, that we've actually seen a few jitters starting to display themselves from within the party. At the same time, we've seen National go down to around 45% support in the polls, and that's a trend, and it's dipping. Its coalition partners, ACT, are think any reasonable-minded person would say it's very unlikely that ACT would get it back into Parliament, that it wouldn't win Epsom, and its polling is so small that it wouldn't go near on the party list getting back into Parliament. Maude Party, it's got succession problems. It's not going to get back easily either. So National's lost its friends in a sense. If you're looking toward the long-term game, if National does not recover the ground that it's lost and gain some, then it can't win the next election. Meanwhile, you've got the public mood actually liking Russell Norman, leader of the Greens, and saying, well, his economic policies actually make sense, they're solution-based, they're not scary, and seeing the Labour Party kind of trying to actually get itself back into order to a point where people are thinking, well, it could govern, it's not so bad. And you've got an acceptance that a coalition is probably the way it would go with the Labour-Green coalition, and they've got the numbers basically to take the Treasury benches next time round. That is what is starting to show in the polls.
How much work do you think the Greens, though, have got to do to be in the eyes of small-town New Zealand, sensible economic players?
There's quite a lot that it can do, and that is one of rationalising out the broader benefits of an economic plan that doesn't waste money in trying to clean up mistakes of environmental damage, that basically accentuates regional development in a way that engages more of the people at less of a cost for those that are already got their snouts in the trough, if you like. The Green Party, I think, though, is doing it strategically the right way, in my view, Simon, for what it's worth, in that it has been pushing out its leader, Russell Norman, who can explain away in simple terms what is complex economics. And it's not scary to people so much now as it was, say, 5 years ago. It makes sense to a lot of people, I think, from what we can see. The next wave of its strategy would be a challenge, and it's the same challenge that Labour has, is to come up with not just a leader kind of position on things, but a deeper expression of its other members in Parliament with solution-based policies that identify with those people in the provinces and in the urban areas and the cities. And that's when you can see that parties transfer from being merely opposition parties. If Labour and the Greens can take this on, they'll end up being a cabinet in waiting. And as soon as the public basically identifies them as the alternative to what's already in, and a preferred alternative and a cabinet in waiting, then it's a foregone conclusion. Right.
One last question, Selwyn. Over the next few months, now we've had these, as I mentioned at the start, we've had the backtrack over teacher cuts, ACC's resignations, Sky City. Which one of these is the defining issue, do you think, which is the parties are going to really scrap over?
I don't think there is any single one issue here. I think it's the brand that's being damaged. That meaning the National Party's brand is being damaged over a cluster of things that are going awry for it. And I think it does come down to a flaw in the Prime Minister's management skills. And I think maybe we spoke about this briefly once before, but I do think that the public in New Zealand is well used to having an economy and its social policies well engineered, and each cog coordinates with another cog, and you might not agree with it, but you can see where it's going. Get a sense with National that things are all over the place, that they try to abandon arguably natural proper process over the convention centre, which is being investigated, so the outcome of that will be told in times to come. But that seems to be out of place with a normal government's way of approaching things and making sure tender processes are followed to the letter, but more importantly, to be seen to be doing so. And then you've got this uncoordinated kind of post-budget fiasco over education, where you've got the education minister looking like her own party is actually going out to get her, in a sense. They put her out there, and then they cut her legs off and let her stand there and suffer the backlash.
Right.
The central management of it, I think, is the core one issue, and maybe it is that John Key did not have the experience in that management area prior to going into politics that we all thought he did. Maybe it requires a more steady hand on the tiller, a national party led by, I'm not sure who it would be, but somebody like Jim Bolger, who was considered to be very much a person who had his hand on the tiller, but steered things in a particular direction and did not surprise his own party or his supporters along the way.
Selwyn, thank you for your time today. That's a fascinating discussion, as always. We'll talk to you next week. Hope you have a good week.
Okay, mate. Take care.
Bye.